solidarity with our European allies, as they have stood with us on so many occasions. And we have to intensify our efforts to find and prevent terrorists from ever doing this again. It's going to be a long challenge because of a lot of factors, including, the easy accessibility to powerful explosives and the mobility of terrorists in today's world. But we've got to be absolutely strong and smart and steady in how we respond.
Secretary Clinton, it's Savannah Guthrie. As you well know, we aren't yet aware whether or not ISIS is taking responsibility for this, if ISIS directed this, or if ISIS merely inspired this. Nonetheless, I think we all agree that ISIS is really at the heart of this. And if you were president today, what would we be doing differently to try to get at this root cause?
Well, Savannah, you're right that we're not sure yet, but it's also true that, we have been confronting the threat of terrorism for quite some time, and this is the latest terrible manifestation of it. We've got to tighten our security. I've talked about our visa system and our passenger name record system. When I was Secretary of State, we often had some difficulties with our European friends because they were reluctant to impose the kind of strict standards we were looking for. That after Paris has changed, and we need to do much more to tighten things up. And I know our security professionals are working to do that. But it's unrealistic to say we're going to completely shut down our borders to everyone. That would stop commerce, for example, and that's not in anybody's interest. But we have to do a much better job in coordination with the Europeans on tracking and following anyone who has any connection with terrorist activity or terrorism.
Secretary Clinton, when the European Union was established, borders became basically invisible. Anybody could travel between different countries in Europe incredibly easily. Do you think Europe's going to have to reconsider that now that we see how easily terrorists have moved, for example, between France and Belgium and other countries?
Matt, I think they already are reconsidering it. The dream of a whole free Europe that was at peace is one that should not be walked away from. It was an essential development after the horrors of World War II. But we do have to be realistic about how people move from place to place. And it's been my understanding that the Europeans are looking hard at how to better protect their borders internally. And, of course, they are coping with this extraordinary wave of Syrian refugees and refugees from other parts of the Middle East and South Asia. They have labored to do that in an appropriate way, but that, too, poses extra burdens on them. So this is a time for us to reaffirm our solidarity with our European friends and allies individually and through NATO to support them as they struggle with how best to defeat the terrorist threat they face.
Secretary Clinton, this is obviously a time to think about what the proper policy response is, what the law enforcement response is, but I just keep thinking about someone sitting at home and watching these images and thinking about Europe and our friends in Western Europe and wondering, could something like this happen here? Is this something that people should fear?
Well, Savannah, I think we've got to recognize that the threat posed by the modern incarnation of terrorism is one that we have to be vigilant against. And I know that Americans have every reason to be frightened about what they see and what happened to us in San Bernardino. And remember, the terrorists are trying to undermine the democratic values that are at the root of our way of life. We cannot let them succeed. So we have to, intensify our efforts to keep America safe and to work with our friends and allies to help them be safe as well from these threats.
You know, it seems, Secretary Clinton, that information is so vital when it comes to combating terrorism, and that is why perhaps you hear some people say when you get a key suspect, like the one who was taken into custody in Brussels last Friday, maybe you should use some enhanced techniques to get information out of that person. It also may be why, if you look at this country, in the wake of the San Bernardino shootings that you just brought up, a lot of people say, wait a minute, Apple, you've got to unlock that phone that was left behind by one of the shooters because it's crucial that we get that information. Is that just simply a logical step that people take after events like this? And do you agree with it?
You know, Matt, I think it is certainly understandable that people would be asking those kinds of questions. You know, as to waterboarding, you know, our country's most experienced and bravest military leaders will tell you that torture is not effective. It does put our own soldiers and increasingly our own civilians at risk. But we do have to give law enforcement and intelligence professionals all the tools they need to do the job to keep America safe. And they don't need to resort to torture, but they are going to need more help. And, you know, just yesterday I said, with respect to the question about the cell phone, I just can't believe that we can't find a reasonable path forward here, trying to help our law enforcement professionals get the information they need, both to follow up on attacks, but most importantly to prevent them, and that, you know, the privacy and safety of people who can lose their lives or be injured in an attack has to be weighed against the privacy and safety of our information. And I just still believe there's got to be a way for our great tech companies and our law enforcement professionals to figure out how to deal with that. It appears from the early reporting on the capture of the terrorist suspect in Brussels that one of the ways he was tracked down was through the use of his cell phone. And we also know that terrorists are not stupid. They are quickly adapting, and the more they use encryption to communicate, you know, the more difficult it's going to be to figure out what the heck they're up to. So we've got to work this through, consistent with our values.
All right. Secretary Clinton, we appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you both. Thank you. And I appreciate the way you're handling this very serious matter.
All right, thank you.
Hello, Today fans. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking that button down there and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives.